Hi, welcome. My name is Dale McCluskey. And in this video, I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about the various roadmaps which are involved when it comes to dog training. People ask, are there really more than one way to train a dog? And ultimately, it's, what I show very clearly is this whole issue of dogs as relational beings, the whole focus on what is really at work when it comes to influencing a dog's overall decision-making process, and the glue that holds it all together within the various roadmaps by way of, say, conditioning or counter conditioning and corrective influence and all these different little interplays, how these all connect. And so when people are looking at wondering, why is it that things will appear to hold together, within certain kind of situations, but seem to fall apart when I take my dog into other situations. It's all about the ebb and flow of these roadmaps and how they, at what level they're creating change relationally, And so again, my show is that primarily, and that's why I take it right down. When you look at my system, I take it right down to at the intervention level, because I show that how a dog's decision-making process basically follows nature's path that way. And so the whole context of, well, how do you actually influence a dog's decision-making process? How do you push back on unwanted behavior? Is it really, does it follow this learning script? I mean, can we really teach our dogs how to, get along better with others, or change out the imagery? And even in the context of, say, counter conditioning, when you're using treats to create a different association to something positive for the dog. Well, that's an example of, again, where you'll see the ebb and flow of whether or not it's just associative change, through, and what I mean by that, whether it's just kind of changing out the picture of things, so that, say, here's an example, is say the dog doesn't like other dogs, it doesn't like people, and say a specific person, you might get them to give the dog treats. It could be like the mailman, you might get them to kind of play along, so to speak. And so when the dog comes at them, you pull out the treat, and here you go. The dog starts to say, hey, the mailman comes along here now, it's something positive, I'll get something in return. So yes, you are changing out, you're creating a different association from, wanting to tear the mailman's arms off and not get your mail, to hey, I get something good. I mean, I'm not going to tear up the mailman. I mean, the mailman gives me stuff. And so, but the problem with that is, again, it's the same as if you apply it, why this stuff works or doesn't work. You don't have to go any further than apply it within the human context with selfish people, and why people, when you're, as a parent, when you're trying to, say, resolve an issue with a child, what are you using to create influence, or what's below the surface of all that? So for example, I use the example of telling your kid that you need milk at the store. And say, just go get me the milk, because I'm your parent, we need milk. Remember this family, and go get the milk. Or go get the milk, and I'll give you a chocolate bar, and then what's underlying that. And then you take it a little further. Well, the kid's out of control, and they're a teenager, and the grades are bad, and they're getting in fights at school, and they're doing all this stuff, hanging around people, and say, listen, clean up your act, buy you, bring a new car. So, we talk about appearances and how things can appear to go a certain way. We can be deceived. It's the same script. I mean, we'll say, hey, they're cleaning their room up, grades are coming up, and all these good things are happening at the physical. Okay, and this is the whole thing. We get into this thing about why it is that people are fooled. It's because through behavioralism, okay, the exterior of things, it's the same type of thing that's generated through this example. You say, hey, everything's going great. but the person's motivated because they want that new car. They don't have the means to buy the new car. They're a teenager. They want the new car. So everything goes great for a month or two, and then suddenly you get a call from the police. Well, your son's been involved in an accident. The car's on its roof. The people have been drinking, and people have been taken to the hospital. And you're like, wow, what? I don't understand. Everything was going so great. I mean, they were looking, but just from the surface of things, right? That's why you get a picture of something, say, with a parent hanging out with their kid and sitting on the couch and watching TV together. You don't get a clear image. It looks great. You have to be there for the whole day and put everything in context. Okay, what type of influence does the parent have, and what type of boundaries are being set? But it's the same thing with, when people take this whole idea about learning. Okay, what's happening, and this model shows it so clearly how it is that things can come off the rails because through response alone. The learning-based narrative and script is that if it looks good, and that means if a dog's doing the sit down and stay within these controlled environments using the motivating agent. Now we're taking from a new car to treats. How it is that the dog can go cycle through all the script of what represents good behavior, and relational change actually not move forward. And what I show is that's very possible. It happens all the time because trainers aren't discerning. They're not qualifying the type of the motives that underpin response. Okay, they're not qualifying the type of influence that's taking hold or not between dogs and owners within these environments. They're just focused on the ideology and the fact the dog is actually going through the script. So they're saying how that script runs is what the narrative is that the physical, the exterior represents a similar like-minded state, and therefore represents that relational change is moving forward. And what I'm saying is, no, that's not always true at all. Just like in the model with, I show with the narcissist, okay, how they can go through all the motions of things just to keep supply source going. They have absolutely no empathy, no respect for anybody. It's the same thing. It shares some common threads. It's not exactly the same, but it shares very common threads by way of the physical, okay, by way of response. But the whole attached, how the motives may not line up, okay, because relational change hasn't happened. Means the person hasn't really truly changed how they think at the level of leadership with fulfilling that role, which is going to influence the dog's overall decision making process. So, but the ability to discern this comes through embracing dogs as the relational beings they are, which those who promote this learning this way don't do that. Okay, in fact, if you ask them, what does dominance represent, and really, I challenge people to think about this. Okay, I cover the exterior of things, the physical, how they separate. They kind of put it in different packages. They'll say, well, the physical force, okay, represents, the dominance issue represents physical force. Like they look at the exterior things and try to package that up and say, if you bring your dog under leadership, if you move the leash a certain way, if you use certain devices, that's cruel and unusual, and that's dog abuse. Okay, but what I show is, mind and body are connected. To understand what dominance means beyond some kind of narrative, and it's a false narrative, you have to bring it. You have to take it. You have to bring it together. It's the whole. It's relational, which means through nature, it's strength and weakness. It's the person. It's defined by how you think. It's defined by your personality. It's defined by how you connect to the relationship with dogs. Dogs are able to get a very clear picture of where we're standing in nature that way. Through that's why very confident people are going to have less problems with dogs if they're connecting with dogs that way. People who are mirroring their emotions, who are connecting on an emotional level, are going to have they're going to struggle the most with behavior problems because dogs will interpret that as weakness. Okay, and then again, that influences how the dog thinks. So it's all about bringing the ability to discern or to be able to see the glue that holds it all together, and it's relational glue. So even the ebb and flow of counter conditioning, the example I use, again, you can change the appearance of things, you can change the imagery, But it's like what you're doing is, the dog will connect the person something that they like, but what it's kind of like doing at the relational level is like putting your fingers in the holes at the front of the boat and the water's coming in, and you're plugging those holes, but you're focused on that script. You don't see the dogs as relational beings there, so that the water's coming in the back of the boat and the boat's still going down. That's why you'll say, okay, I've changed out the imagery, the dog's getting along good with the mailman, but you're still going to have problems everywhere. But what happens is the problem is people are usually in denial, okay, because they're sold out to this ideology, so that's why you don't see transparency, okay, especially the people promoting it. You'll see a lot of kind of duck and cover. You won't see top to bottom this stuff brought out because they can't do it without it being exposed. So they kind of hide out behind these arguments and going on. So because their identity is intertwined in this stuff, okay, they elevate the ideology up in such a way that the needs of dogs don't get met because the dogs become an extension of the ideology. If they don't conform through it, then they're marginalized and they're devalued, and that's why when I talk about this whole issue of love, it's self-love. Okay, it's not, the ideology doesn't represent meeting the needs of another. I mean, the motives, even not just the underlying motives of physical response. You got to look at the underlying motives of the people promoting it, and people don't like being challenged, but that's what's going on. So it's not science in the sense of holding hands with truth that way. It's not. I mean, because if it was, then people would, from within would be challenging this and saying something's going on here. It's breaking down for some people, it's working for other people. What's going on? That's not, they're not looking at it that way because they've already made their positions known. They've already defined, packaged it up in such a way that there's no wiggle room. Okay, if you look at the arguments and what they're saying and how they're exploiting, okay, they're misrepresenting both the dominance issue and they're exploiting learning. Okay, they're pushing it beyond these boundary lines of common sense and good judgment. Okay, they're not putting it in context. They're just saying if it looks good and feels good, it must be good, and they're running this. They're running through it this way, the script this way. So that's why people in these training environments, you might have a group of 30 people. You're going to have similar physical responses with the dogs. Okay, through these motivating agents and building bridges that way through that. But you won't get a sense of which dog and owner's relationship change is actually happening, which ones is not, because of the dynamics that are playing out there, but more specifically within the context of response. They're not qualifying it. So again, even within the script of certain roadmaps, change can happen. Okay, it can, because it all depends on how people are thinking, how they're connecting. So, certain times, the ebb and flow of that relationship change may actually take hold. But more often times than not, it isn't, especially if you look at the spectrum. I have a video called, I define it as the spectrum of change. When you go from, approaching training as an intervention at the relational level, and then the further away it goes from that pivot point, and the pinnacle being, this is the thing people have to understand, the furthest away point being treats and clickers, because the ideology way it's promoted is anti-dominance, anti-leadership. And so you're going to have a high fail rate. But the problem is the dynamic on top of that makes it so troubling, it's so problematic for people to figure out is this whole issue of response. Why people don't get clarity as to, like, people will go through this and not even have a sense that they're even failing based on the decision-making process of the dog being influenced at the unwanted behavior level. They don't have a sense of that because response will line up, okay, at a certain level. It will all kind of fit. And the test is after you go home, discover nothing's really changed. I'm still, dealing with these behavior issues. And then you'll call or phone up people promoting the ideology this way, and they'll say, hey, give it more time, or must be a genetic problem with the dog, and all this stuff. It's all it's part of this narrative. But the real issue is the fact of it's not, it doesn't meet the criteria relationally. Okay, it doesn't promote the type of change with how people think and bring them into the right relationship. Okay, it's not just the idea of leadership. You get into the specifics of what is actually moving the relationship from point A to point B. If you look at my relational model, where I bring it down to an intervention, you'll see the proactive nature of that. Okay, so I even make a distinction between corrective and relational influence and what defines that, okay, through this script that I'm using. So right away, but it's about what's reasonable. So when you see me, using this script, how it's playing out right out of the starting gate, I'm approaching training, because that's what it is. When most people are struggling with behavior issues, is because there's an ongoing misalignment. It's already happened. So when you bring this intervention online, you're going to see change fast right at the starting gate. You're going to see the greatest amount of change possible based on you bringing it down to the level that the relationship represents in the first place. You're focused on relational change. And so my system works great. What it does is it brings it right down to that level, and the focus is moving it forward. But it's just reasonable. It's like becoming a balanced parent. Okay, promoting parenting that way. But we're at a starting gate. We're not wasting time. It's the whole thing with the system. You're not going through the routines of something or some different interactions or running around pylons and doing a bunch of stuff that oftentimes it's just scripted and it's not creating anything. I mean, that's the same thing. You can exercise your dog and get them to displace energy and not create any relational change at all. It's understanding how the dynamics, how everything fits, okay, so that relational change is going to happen. So everything, you're not wasting time. You're not wasting your money. Everything fits into place so that change is going to happen. So the whole, how learning is how it fits within this model, how it intersects. It establishes a reference point. It's like a marker, okay? Because once relational change happens, and that is what's creating the focus of the dog. That's what's building on the ability to direct the dog's decision-making process, is to creating relational change, defining, okay? And that's why you'll see in police dog settings, within that context, these dogs will often have already role change before they even are introduced to more formalized training, and then just kind of tweaking things, okay? Just kind of more enhancing what's already there. So you're just directing it. It's easily done if changes happen at that level already, at a certain level. So, but this system, it's all about focusing in on what is at work with creating change and not getting sidetracked by certain things which often are not helpful to create change. But that's the thing, when change does happen, then people are getting very confused because they can't figure out why is it breaking down for some and not others. And you'll see it, but a lot of times these trainers won't even admit to it. I mean, they're not, they're overselling it. And a lot of times the problem is, once you start crossing lines. Okay, years ago, I saw this stuff. Once you start crossing lines, shift the focus away from something wrong with the ideology, you start saying there's something wrong with the dog, there's something wrong with the person, or just ignoring it all and just whatever, you're finished. Okay, this is the thing, it's ethics then. So this issue here has a lot to do with an ethical issue. It's not just the fact of an ideology, it's a belief system, and then there's an ethical issue in that. It's morally bankrupt is what it is. And I talk about this a lot in my videos, but the thing here is, here we have 4 million dogs being destroyed every year in North America, and people are totally disconnected from some hard truth here. And it's about getting people to start thinking different, to see dogs as relational beings they are, to start to see that this roadmap, this learning-based roadmap, is very, very problematic because it brings it further and further and further away from at the relational intervention level. It takes it further away from connecting rightly with dogs and to bring people into right relationships. So when people, like I said, it's all about how it's packaged and how it's come up with. So anyway, just something to think about. I really challenge you to consider what I'm saying. Everything on my website is open, it's transparent, you'll see it all. Even my relational model is there, it's available for free. You can go in and look at it, compare it, think about what I'm saying, challenge yourself, because again, if you really care about your dog and care about lifting that stress off your dog's shoulders, you really got to consider dogs differently, look at them differently. I mean, they have needs which extend beyond just how we think, okay? They have nature needs, and the whole issue about meeting that need comes directly through fulfilling your role rightly through nature. So thanks very much for watching.